So hello and welcome to a new format on the channel where we take a question asked by you, our lovely audience, and get a member of our writing team to answer it in our, usual listicle style. And today we're answering the question of, what are people really seeing when they claim to see Bigfoot? And I'm just going to preface this by saying I am all in on Bigfoot. I have watched almost every single one of those Bigfoot hunting shows. I am in love with the idea of just a big woolly man wandering around the North American forests. So I'm all in. Just know that. Also know that today's script was written by Ian 40. A link to their socials can be found below, but let's get to it, shall we? Most everyone out there has heard of Bigfoot, even if you know him as something like the Yeti or Skunk Ape or Sasquatch or even the Abominable Snowman or one of the other dozens of names that the creature goes by around the world. Also throughout this I am going to be referring to Bigfoot as if he's real, because I can believe that, right? Many cultures worldwide have legends of a large, man-like beast that lives in the wild and is remarkably cagey and usually out of focus. Bigfoot in the North American sense, where his name is literally Bigfoot, only dates back to about 1958. A letter referencing a column published in September 21st, 1958 in the Humboldt Times brought attention to tales from loggers about a large, mysterious creature in the forest. In a follow-up story, they published the name these loggers had given to the thing they claimed to have seen: Bigfoot. From then on, the idea of Bigfoot fascinated people and the legend grew and spread across the US and Canada. Over 10,000 people have reported seeing a Bigfoot since 1958. While the creature's existence has generally been debunked by science, boo, it does lead to one quite important question. If Bigfoot isn't real, what did these 10,000 people see? Let's try and find out, shall we? So, the first thing on the list is hoaxers, of course. In the age of YouTube and TikTok, it's much easier to see how Bigfoot works as a hoax. Back in the day, though, there was still a great fear of a hoax, though not quite as much. Real, credentialed scientists and investigators were willing to give Bigfoot the benefit of the doubt after his footprints were allegedly discovered in 1958 near Bluff Creek, California. Then in 1967, Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin set out near Bluff Creek for the express purpose of finding Bigfoot, and in an amazing coincidence, they did find him and recorded that grainy piece of Bigfoot footage that everybody is aware of. It's the piece we all know, the Gimlin footage. Also, fun fact about Bob Patterson and Gimlin: before they set out to find Bigfoot, they were casting for a movie about an ape man in the woods, and had bought a gorilla costume for unrelated purposes, and then a week later they happened to just capture footage of a gorilla man walking through the forest. But it's a total coincidence. Don't bother looking into it. So, Patterson maintained for his entire life that the film was real, but he's also been accused of being a lifelong conman. Gimlin ended up suing his widow at one point because Patterson made money off the film and then never shared any of it. It's never been confirmed one way or the other if the film is a hoax, and people can make arguments to support either. But it's not the only potential hoax out there. For example, in 2008, two men sold a block of ice found in a mountain containing Bigfoot's body to some researchers, potentially proving the creature's existence. Except for when they thawed the ice out, they found the body was just a rubber gorilla suit full of raw meat. And really, isn't that what we all are? Just a rubber gorilla suit full of raw meat and a skeleton. Again, I'm so happy this is the one I picked to do first. This is the first one of these we're doing, and on the behind the scenes bit where I get to pick from the scripts, I just went to the Bigfoot one. This is the first one. I'm all in on Bigfoot. Let's go. As for that gorilla costume full of raw meat, the hoaxers behind it, one Matt Whitten and Rick Dyer, have become infamous in the Bigfoot hunting world for perpetuating numerous other hoaxes that get them media attention. For example, in 2014, Dyer even claimed to have shot and killed the creature. Whitten, who was a police officer at the time, was fired for the hoax. Fired for claiming to have shot a mythical creature. Anyway, remember those footprints we mentioned earlier that got everyone excited about the idea of Bigfoot way back in 1958? In 2003, just after the man who found them died, his children told the world that their dad had done it as a hoax. But that's not the only thing that could explain what people are seeing when they claim to see Bigfoot, because there's also pranks. Now, a prank and a hoax are similar in nature, but we do need to draw a distinction here. In a hoax, we as the greater audience are the ones being duped. Someone set up those fake videos or pictures and footprints with the intent on pulling one over on many people at once. A prank, on the other hand, is a joke usually played on a specific person or small group. The scale is the distinction here. The pranksters are less interested in telling a lie to fool the world and more interested in making a single person or group fall for the joke. With that in mind, it's worth noting noting that there have been Bigfoot pranks that are smaller scale than the hoaxes we mentioned earlier. YouTube channel Nelk has pranked so-called Bigfoot experts with fake Bigfoot content more than once. You can find dozens of other videos on YouTube and on TikTok featuring quick, simple jokes that usually involve fake footprints or someone in a gorilla costume just running through the woods. The most grand-scale Bigfoot prank, though, was played by a man named Eugene Hendrick from Brantley, Alabama, who pranked the town of about 800 people for a solid half-century. People in Brantley first saw Bigfoot tracks in the mid-70s. Remarkably, it just stayed sort of a town secret that they had a Bigfoot wandering around. People knew about it but didn't really ever say anything. In reality, Eugene Hendrick cut out some fake feet, stuck them to the bottom of his own shoes and just wandered around the riverbank every now and again. When people looked into it, including the police, because there's a Bigfoot wandering around, the police want to shoot it, I suppose, Hendrick stopped making the tracks, but the story in the town never really died. In fact, decades later, the local diner decided to make a giant Sasquatch burger to go on the menu to capitalise on the stories from decades prior. That was when Hendrick came clean, and since then the town has gone sort of Bigfoot crazy, much in the same way that Rachel, Nevada cashes in on alien enthusiasts because of its proximity to Area 51. Speaking of awful noises, I'm just going to talk about some Bigfoot shows right now, because one of my favourite Bigfoot shows is the ones where they just go into the woods with a night vision camera and just scream. I don't know what the name of the show is, because they all kind of blend into one. It's just people wandering around the woods saying, I think I saw a Bigfoot. There's just this guy who's like, well, I heard a Bigfoot once, and he just, okay, what did it sound like? And it just cuts to into the middle of the woods, just going, oh, and that's it. And it's like, cool, that's a Bigfoot. Good for you, bro. Again, there are other explanations for what people may be seeing when they claim to see a Bigfoot, and the most common one is likely other animals, mostly bears. So one of the likeliest explanations for Bigfoot sightings, as well as evidence left behind of the creature, is just other animals. The FBI have actually investigated several Bigfoot sightings and conducted DNA analysis on hair samples that they were given by people who claimed to have seen the creature. The results indicated that, in the case of this one specific story, that they'd found deer hair. There's more than just deer in the woods, though, after all. So, black bears have also been linked to Sasquatch sightings all over North America, and the higher a black bear population, the more likely a person is to claim to have seen a Bigfoot. For every 5,000 black bears in an area, there's one Bigfoot sighting reported. Fewer bears mean fewer Bigfoots, and that seems to indicate a reasonable correlation. My theory, though, is that the Bigfoots eat the bears. Think about it. Now, one of the things that makes black bears a primary candidate for being the thing people see when they think they've seen a Bigfoot is that they're found all across Canada and in 32 US states. They're also known to stand on their hind legs, making them as tall or taller than a human, and they even walk around on their hind legs sometimes. So you can't definitively say this proves every Bigfoot sighting in those places is a bear. Some people do see him in Florida, and there are no black bears in Florida, but it should be, of course, some raised eyebrows at the very least. Speaking of Florida, they claim their own version of Bigfoot called a skunk ape. It's also been seen in Georgia as well. The skunk ape differs from Bigfoot in the sense that it lives in swamps and it smells, according to most witness reports at least. But even the skunk ape may just be another misidentified animal, as there have been reports of escaped monkeys in the area for years. So it could just be a monkey that smells. But then again, monkeys do throw their own turds at people, so that tracks. Then, in 2014, you had a 3-year study by Oxford University that involved DNA testing of hair samples they received in an open call to museums and private collections for anomalous primate hair. They received, all in all, 36 samples from all over the world, not just from the US, but Russia, Indonesia, India, and many others. The hair samples belong to a veritable zoo of creatures, not just bears, but wolves, cows, raccoons, deers, porcupines, and even a few human hairs in there as well, but sadly, none belong to a mythical creature we like to call Mr. Bigfoot. Well, that's not the only thing that Bigfoot could potentially be, because there's also the possibility that all those Bigfoot sightings are simply other people. So Bigfoot is usually seen at a distance by witnesses. Something is moving through the woods, it walks on 2 legs, its arms swing around like a man, and it's very large. There is one thing that everyone in the world has probably seen that walks on 2 legs, like a man, swings its arms, like a man, and is very big. Just a big guy. If you're a big man in the woods and someone only catches a glimpse of you and that person is inclined to believe there may be some big feet out there, they might mistake you for that particular creature of legend. We know this because this has happened multiple times in the past, more than once. So in 2018, you had a man in Montana who reported that he was setting up targets for shooting in the woods on his property. As he was setting them up, a bullet whizzed past his head, about 3 feet away. Moments later, a second bullet whizzed past his head on the other side. He realised that someone was trying to shoot at him, and he ran as more shots were fired. Eventually, the man was able to find the person who was shooting at him and confronted them. The shooter's explanation was quite simple. He thought the man was Bigfoot, and according to a quote provided, "If I see something that looks like Bigfoot, I just shoot at it." Which isn't a scary thing to hear at all from a man wandering around the woods with a gun. During the investigation, it came to light that a woman in the area had also been shot at in the woods earlier by the same guy. Though she didn't speak to him, she just ran away. She did see his truck though, and that's how they managed to find out it was the same guy. That means that there is just a guy out there somewhere in Montana roaming around the woods, shooting at anyone he thinks might be a Bigfoot. And remember, the description of Bigfoot is, it kinda looks like a dude. A slightly weirder story though came from North Carolina in the Appalachian Mountains back in 2017. A Bigfoot was spotted by witnesses roaming the area. However, in this case, a man came forward shortly thereafter to take credit for being the Bigfoot. The man claimed he was a shaman and had been wearing a furry suit. Not a fursuit, but a suit made of fur. There's a distinction because normally fursuits are all like bright primary colours or pastel colours, and as far as we know, Bigfoot isn't pink. Gawain McGregor called it a sacrament, and he wears a suit made of animal skins to wander around the forest, ironically to connect with Bigfoot. He claims that after reciting a Bigfoot prayer, he has encountered the creature on more than one occasion, but to be clear, he didn't encounter Bigfoot the night he was mistaken for Bigfoot. He claims that people saw him dressed in his costume trying to find Bigfoot, and they thought he might have been Bigfoot, but he wasn't Bigfoot. He was in his furry costume that he wears to try and track down and interact with Bigfoot. But there was no Bigfoot that night, but he's seen it before. I think that's right. And before we move on from that very simple story, it's worth noting that witnesses who McGregor claims saw him denied that it was him because they said the thing they saw was at least 8 feet tall and moved faster than any human. And of course, we can always trust the opinion of someone who sees something in the woods at night. And a final example that's a bit more fun is back in 1982 when George Lucas was filming Return of the Jedi in the Redwood National Park. Peter Mayhew, the actor who plays Chewbacca, was assigned 2 assistants who wore brightly coloured vests, who all they were told to do is just follow Peter Mayhew around, so they could tell people who saw him in the woods from a distance that he wasn't a Bigfoot, he's just a guy in a Chewbacca costume. And kind of a fun bonus fact about that is that in Star Wars canon, before Disney bought Star Wars and just sent it to the Legends canon, there is like a story told where it is Indiana Jones is asked to go to those same woods because they've got mysterious sightings of a Bigfoot creature. He goes there, he finds the Millennium Falcon, which crashed after going through a time portal, comes across Han Solo's corpse, notes that he shares a bond with it somehow that he can't explain, and nods to the fact that Harrison Ford played both characters, and then he discovers that Bigfoot is not Bigfoot, but Chewbacca still roaming around the woods because Wookiees live for hundreds of years. Star Wars is insane. We'll cover that one day, but before that, we've got to cover the final entry on this list. So one of the more unusual, but probably most likely explanations for Bigfoot sighting is pareidolia. That is the human trait of finding the familiar in the unfamiliar. It's why you can stare at the clouds and see a familiar shape, like a dog or a dragon or a car. It's also why you can look at, wood grains and potentially see a face. Or in regards to audio, you can listen to your dog or cat, like make random vocalizations and swear they're saying, "I love you." And when you think of this, it's like, yeah, you can sort of find Bigfoot anywhere if you look really hard, because pareidolia affects perception. Many Bigfoot hunters, for example, record audio that they can't readily identify and then ascribe it to the creature when it could just as likely be any other animal out there. It's just they don't know what it is, but their mind wants to find meaning in the noise and just says it might be Bigfoot. It's also a reasonable explanation of how a bear or another hunter or just a dude wearing a fursuit wandering around the woods could be mistaken for a Bigfoot, especially if the glimpse is fleeting. Eyewitnesses are notoriously bad at accurately remembering details. The less exposure a person has to what they see, the more likely they are to get details wrong, and the mind can easily fill in the rest. And in most cases, it wants to, because the human mind doesn't like not knowing what it's seeing. H.P. Lovecraft kind of, told us about this. But finally, we can answer the question. Is Bigfoot real or not? Yes. No, I have to read the script, but yes. Do you know why? It's fun. It's fun to imagine that was just a big gorilla wandering around the woods, but I have to read from the script now. So it's exceptionally hard to prove a negative. A lot of Bigfoot hunters know that. You can't deny that there are a lot of grifters in the Bigfoot community. There are TV shows that last for years, predicated on the idea of hunting Bigfoot, even though they have never once found or seen him. And my favourite one of those shows is a show simply called $1 Million Bigfoot Hunt, which for me might be the most genius premise for a reality TV show ever conceived. And the basic premise of it is okay, we're going to get a bunch of people who claim they found or seen a Bigfoot and offer them $1 million if they can find concrete, conclusive scientific evidence that Bigfoot exists. And that's genius, right? Because they're never going to get that $1 million. So that show must have been so cheap to produce. And the episodes are, we send people into the woods and they wander around going, it's a stick. It's a stick there. Say, okay, what does that mean? Well, Bigfoot could have done that stick. And they bring the stick back to an actual scientist who has to sit there and go, this is a stick. Yeah, but Bigfoot could have moved that stick. It's like, yeah. Or it could have been a wolf. Or the wind. And you just see that scientist get progressively more pissed off. And the reason I want to recommend that show for people watching at home is because there's a guy on it who, when he's asked what his experience with hunting Bigfoots is, he says, well, I shot one. So what? So, oh yeah, I know I'm going to win this competition because I shot a Bigfoot. What do you mean you shot a Bigfoot? I say, yeah, I shot a Bigfoot years ago. And I got so obsessed with this guy, I went and tracked down another documentary that he's on where he's talking about it. And the story is, he was wandering around the woods, saw a vaguely humanoid creature, was scared, shot it, wandered over, saw that it had a smaller child version of itself, and then shot that too. And then was so ashamed that he buried the whole thing in the woods. And I'm legit convinced that guy shot and killed someone in the woods. And that his coping mechanism is just claiming that he saw a Bigfoot. Anyway, so we've already seen how hoaxers make money off things like the idea of Bigfoot. So many people have financial motivations to keep the idea of Bigfoot alive, even if they can't show any evidence that Bigfoot is a real thing. What we do know is that no one's ever caught Bigfoot, no one's ever found a dead one, no one's ever found so much as a hair sample that couldn't be identified as belonging to another animal. No one's ever captured a clear image of this creature that can withstand any degree of scientific scrutiny. No one has even found scats or an old nest or teeth marks or bones or anything that would indicate that these things exist as we say they do, which is kind of weird considering that they're supposed to be 8 feet tall and run up 500 miles an hour. There is no compelling scientific evidence to suggest a creature like Bigfoot is real, though it is fun to imagine that he does. We do have hoaxers and pranks, we have DNA evidence from an abundance of animals, and we have human tendency to see what we want to see, whether it's real or not. There are plenty of things that people are seeing when they think they've seen Bigfoot, but so far it seems unlikely that Bigfoot is actually one of the things any of those people have actually seen. And again, I'm still all in, because it's fun. I'm also a big fan of, there's a smaller scale conspiracy theory from the UK about there supposedly being a large cat creature that lives on the moors. And it's called the Beast of Bodmin Moor. And I also love the idea that there's just a big jaguar running around the dales in the UK eating chickens. And every couple of years, there's just like another news story of like someone saw it. Well, here's definitive picture proof, and it's just a blob. It's a blob with like a tail, and it's like, that could be a fox. Like, nah, man, that's a jaguar. I'm like, you know what? Okay. Of all the crazy things I've heard people insist are true on the internet, that there's a jaguar running around the Yorkshire Dales, I'm okay with that. And if you've enjoyed this jaunt through the history of what people see when they think they're seeing Bigfoot, I do hope you give this video a like. You comment below with feedback, suggestions, or questions you would like a member of our writing team to answer. Subscribe for more, and as always, I've been your host, Karl Smallwood. I love talking about Bigfoot. This has been so fun. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Cheers.